is JJ from Once Somerville. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to see you. What you're about to enjoy is some special content created just for you by the Once family. We appreciate the time that the artists have given, and we've put a link to their tip jar in the comments below. We've also put a link there to our GoFundMe. This is one of the ways that we're going to get through this time until we can be open and together again. Art and community are our priorities here at Once. We really miss you, and we can't wait until we can all be back together. Until then, this is our way of holding our community close and continuing to make art. So, before you enjoy the show, a couple of notes. The bathrooms are in the back. On the left, no flash photography, and as always, no crowd surfing. Enjoy. We'll see you soon. Oh, hey there.
Hey.
Hey, y'all. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to Let's Get Critical. So silly, right? But it gives me an excuse to play that amazing Juliana Hatfield cover, which I totally love. Although Joan Anderman has promised me, Joan, if you're listening, I'm waiting for the field day version going, let's get critical. She said she'd do it.
There you go.
To it. Field Day's got to do it. Field Day, great local band. If you've never heard of them, go look them up.
They are great.
Hey, Matt. Hi. We're going to talk a lot about local bands because you're really up on that, which is cool. And I like talking about local bands. But before we begin, we're going to talk a little bit about you, local kid, which you just reminded me of. And so I'm going to ask you a little bit about that. And you really are, I noticed in your bio, it says you're an all-round music enthusiast, and I'm going to vouch for that because at once I would see you at a huge spread of shows. It was really cool. You really were like from one end to the other, and you really, you know a lot about what you're watching and what you're shooting. And when you talk about bands, you know the history and all of it. And it's really, so it's fun to talk to you about that. And you started in writing, right? And then moved into photography. So I would like to start by going back and giving you a chance to tell your own story. But particularly what I'm interested in is what was it that drew you to the editorial part, the critical part of music? And where were you born, kid?
I was born in Winchester, Massachusetts. I lived in Medford till I was about 6 years old, and then I moved to the suburbs of Tewksbury, which is right by Lowell. Shout out to Lowell. We know some great bands and some great people up there. And now I'm currently back in Medford, about 8 blocks from where I actually grew up, and it's kind of crazy how that happened. So I'm back closer to the city. It was great for all the music that I could see, and close to all the venues, and pretty much like 5 minutes away from your great establishment of Once Ballroom. So to answer your question about what got me into the editorial side of music, it really started in high school. I was actually kind of a late bloomer. I grew up listening to music, whatever my parents were listening to, kind of like, I don't know if you remember 99.5 Wish, maybe, or easy listening. So I grew up listening to like Tina Turner and James Taylor, stuff that's still, in my heart now. But then when high school came around, I kind of got pushed into somewhat where you were in the 90s in the grunge scene and all those bands. Like I was like, what is this? And kind of like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so then I just started deep diving into everything and just being like, all right, I want to know everything about this band. And then elder classmen in my freshman year of high school were showing me bands like White Zombie and Pantera and Deftones. So again, all over the map, but I was just like absorbing it all. So in high school, I was always one of those guys that was like, oh, you got to check out this band. They're great. They're great. And everyone would be like, leave me alone. I'm doing my work. Like, get out of here. And I'd be like, no, but this band is so great. And I had my Discman and everything. So I kind of annoyed people with my passion for music. But to me, it was just like, I liked it almost more. Like I can remember things I was listening to where I was sitting in class, rather than what I was actually learning. And then when I hit college, that's when I started writing. I had an amazing English professor at Wentworth, which is actually where I started. I was a civil engineering major, which is kind of
Wow.
random. Yeah. And my English professor at the time, shout out Beth Ann Cook Cornell. She was amazing. We're still connected now. But anyway, she said, "You seem like more of an arts humanities type of guy. What are you doing like at a tech school?" Anyway, she encouraged me to write for the newspaper. I ended up getting a cover story of bands that came to Wentworth back in like 2000. It was Saliva and Sum 41 and Stacey Jones's American Hi-Fi. So that was random. So it was kind of like, whoa. And then my grandma actually at the time wouldn't let me get a camera until I promised her that I would graduate college. Yeah. So I ended up switching schools. Long story, won't get into it. That's boring. And I ended up getting a degree from UMass Lowell. And I continued writing for the newspaper, where I met some incredible people, photographers and writers alike, and just was always going to live music, like whether or not I was writing about it or I just wanted to go see it.
In Lowell,
In Lowell, in Boston.
in the early 90s.
No, this was more like mid to late 90s.
Mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
So WFNX is in Lynn, right? But not
Yeah.
far away. And there's a lot of bands moving through Lowell already at that time.
Yeah. So
Were
unfortunately,
you going into Boston to see shows, or were there shows in Lowell then that were happening?
So most of them, I guess, I was seeing in Boston because to me, Lowell was somewhat unknown. I mean, I saw some shows at UMass, but my timeline actually skipped more. So started in the music in the 90s, but then when I started seeing shows when I was kind of old enough was more like 98, 99, and then 2000. So we're jumping ahead a decade now. So when I was seeing bands in Lowell, it was after I kicked myself in the butt. Pearl Jam played at UMass Lowell's like gym, and I was too young. I have a lot of friends that went, and I remember seeing.
We could do an entire episode about shows we regret not seeing.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
We could just go back and forth. Shows
Yeah.
we regret not seeing. I could play that game for hours and hours.
I know.
Then
it's
we
a shame.
could do like yard sale items we regret not buying. That would be the next one.
I have too much stuff. So sometimes I think I didn't regret not buying because I always bought. Now I'm like getting
and
rid
now
of.
We know Matt's secret. He's actually a hoarder.
Yeah, my girlfriend can attest.
Well, you're in a nice, clean space right now.
Yeah, her place.
So you were writing for the paper, but then you sort of took a break before you segued into photography. So you had to graduate from college to get that camera. What did you get?
Yeah. So it was crazy. I didn't really know what I was getting, but I used to have like point and shoots, the disposable cameras.
Sure.
Disposable one though. So
the paper one.
Yeah. So
you
I
sent the whole thing in and you got your negatives back.
Yeah.
They don't return your negatives now?
That's not cool.
No, it's really not. I got really upset when I saw that happen. I was like, no. Those are mine. I don't care about your digital files. You send me my negatives.
Right? Did they throw them away or did they have them?
I don't know what they do. It's a thing now. You send in the camera, you get back like a digital download number. You don't get your negatives. And I was like, no.
That's where technology like irks me.
Oh my God, when that technology goes out of date, we have no files left. This is already happening to me. I used to shoot very low res digital for a newspaper that didn't need very high res files. It was black and white. It didn't look great anyway, but it was very early days. And I swear it was like half a megapixel, and my film camera broke around that time and I didn't fix it because they needed digital files. Those files are useless. Useless. They're like this big.
That's rough.
All right.
Yeah.
So you got what camera?
So I was actually working at the Apple store at the time. I mentioned that in Soundcheck. And I really didn't know anything about DSLRs or anything. So I ended up buying a Canon point and shoot. I forget which one it was. Like it was an image stabilization, like Digital Elf. So it was one of those small,
the Digital
like silver
Elf, great
ones.
camera.
Yeah,
great camera.
It was great. So it kind of stepped me from disposable level to
Mm-hmm.
point and shoot, but not really knowing like
Yeah.
what manual means, what automatic means, what portrait
Right.
mode. I knew nothing. I just knew I was going to a lot of shows. I wanted to take the image. I wanted to retell it. I wanted to remember it easier. So that's how I started.
Mm.
And
Put a pin in memory. I want to talk about memory. Let's go back
okay,
to that, but keep going.
okay. So and then
Aaron, remind me.
it was about. I'm gonna write down. Um, it was about 4 years of that, of having like the little one, and then the
And
story of sorry.
I gotta ask you this.
Yeah,
So you're taking all these pictures at all these shows
yeah.
because you're so excited about all these shows, which is awesome. I'm like
Hmm.
in awe of this. And where are these pictures going? Is anybody seeing them? Are you seeing them? Are you sending them to magazines and asking them to publish them? Are you working on assignment? What's going on
No,
with these pictures that you're making? Where are they now?
at the time, that's good. I think they were on Facebook. Oh, they were on Flickr. So I noticed on the chat bar, you've got my Flickr page there, flickr.com/Trebmall. For those of you who don't know, spell my last name backwards, and that's where that name come from.
No, seriously, I've always wondered.
I know, it's funny. Sometimes my friends who've known me for years, they're like, "Oh my God, that's what Trebmall is," and I'm like, "Yeah." And then there's others that will just get it right away that don't even know me, and I'm like, "Okay, you're clever," but don't worry,
I've
it's not.
never understood it. And now
Now
I
you do.
know. Now I
Um,
know.
so it wasn't an on assignment. Like I would just show up to a show with my camera, like without even being credentialed. I didn't even know what that was. Like
Sure.
I would sometimes, like on the bigger shows, I would hide my camera like under my belt because they weren't gonna frisk you there. Which I'm sure a lot of us have experience with whether it's a camera or something else that I
I don't
won't.
know. I don't know if it's just me or if a lot of women do this, but I hide things in my bra.
Oh yeah, well I don't
I
have that.
hide
So
things. I tuck things. Yeah, I recommend it. I tuck things into my bra straps because, like, film, not
yeah.
illegal things, but like extra film canisters and stuff. That's how
Oh
I
right.
would.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No,
but
that's
I have been known to, obviously not like an SLR camera. I don't even know where I'm going with this. I'm going to stop now. Keep going, Matt.
okay.
Talk. Just make this.
No, I'm
Make
good at
this
that.
stop.
So okay, so it was the story of how I got into DSLR photography, which is what I'm currently doing now. Is I was a fan, or am a fan, of the band Mute Math. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Say it again.
Mute Math,
Mute
MUT.
Matt.
Yeah, Mute Math. All right. Well,
No,
we'll go
no.
back to them if
But
you
I mean,
want.
there's 100 billion bands in the world,
They're
right?
from New Orleans, Louisiana. They're
Cool.
a
Mute Matt.
jazzy. Yeah.
You know what's going to happen right now?
What?
That link is going to appear in a variety of places on YouTube and Facebook
Yeah, everyone check out
and
Mute Math.
Zoom. MUTE.
Yep, MATH. Mute
MATH.
Math.
Mute
Yeah.
Math. Okay.
So, I was in their fan club, and for whatever reason, I signed up to be like their official photographer at House of Blues in Boston, not
Uh-huh.
thinking I was going to win. And they were like, "Congratulations, we picked you." And I was like, "What?" So I was like, "Wait a minute, I don't have a good camera, quote unquote, to take an official photo of a big band at the House of Blues." So a friend of mine, one of my best friends, shout out to Joanna, had a Nikon DSLR kit. And
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Joanna, I'm like, can I borrow your Nikon kit?" And she's like, yeah, sure. Do you know how to use it? Yeah, sure I do. No problem. So this
It's
was,
just a point and shoot, right?
yeah, no. So, so this was November of 2009. So this is
Okay.
fast forwarding after college. And I was like, I need something big. So I got the camera. I was in the pit. This was it. I was like, oh, I'm here. I can't believe it. And I knew
At
nothing.
House of Blues?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big pit.
Yeah. For someone who'd never like,
Sure. No, I mean, that's like, woo, throwing in.
yeah.
Cool.
So I had my little digital elf with me too, and I
Sure.
had my friend Joanna's Nikon, and I literally was going back and forth because I knew the digital elf better than the DSLR.
No
And
shame.
I remember I was swapping out SD cards though, which if you can think about it, Nikon to Canon, not so compatible when it comes to the digital file stuff. So I was like, oh geez. Um, and I submitted my photos to them, and unfortunately, like they were awful. But after that is when I said, I'm getting myself one of these. and I bought myself my first Canon, which was a Digital Rebel XSI, the 450D, and I was like, I bought it
Was it
for
a kit?
Christmas. Yeah, it was. It came with like the 18 to 55,
Uh-huh.
normal
Yep.
lens, like f5.6 to whatever. And then
That drives me crazy. Those lenses are so slow.
I
Anyway,
know,
go on.
yeah.
They drive me
So,
crazy. I can't stand them.
but then another friend of mine from UMass Lowell, who I was still
Mm-hmm.
in touch with, actually worked at that camera store that's no longer in existence in Davis Square. I forget the name of it now. But shout out to Mark Stern. Mark Stern was like, dude, you need to get a nifty 50. I'm like, what the hell's a nifty 50? So he told me, and he's like, it's the cheapest starter kit. It's like $100. You can do it. He was a Nikon guy himself,
I
but
don't know what a nifty 50 is.
a
What's a
50
nifty
millimeter.
50? Oh, a fixed 50.
Yeah.
Sure.
They call
Yeah,
it the
I was
nifty
actually
50.
so it's funny that you said that because when I was like, oh, it's so slow, and I didn't say it because
Oh.
whatever, but I personally favor a fixed 50 because with a fixed 50 you can even get to like f2, f1.8.
Yeah.
So it's, super fast lens, and I just adore that. So
Yeah,
I'm with you. So you got your nifty 50, which I
Right.
now will remember.
Yeah.
And it changed your life.
It changed
Little
my life.
bluebirds started singing, and there were rainbows and
Yeah.
unicorns.
Yep.
Damn. I
So
feel
then I spent the next couple of years shooting at venues like TT the Bears. Shout out to TTs, I know.
Mhm.
And actually here I got the old Rock and
Old
Roll Rumble
school.
before they moved it to
Angel,
once.
look.
Yeah. Shout out to Angel
Old
and
school.
Rock and
Shout
Roll
out
Rumble
Angel Wood.
and TTs. If you can see it, I don't know.
Oh,
This is made
that's
by
so lovely.
Kevin at Audio Cotton. I don't know if you remember him. I don't think he's doing it anymore.
Oh.
But anyway,
What year is that? Sure. What year?
This was 2013.
Mm-hmm. And you shot it?
Yeah, I think I worked with Angel on that one. Yeah. I couldn't tell you where my photos are.
Why?
Because
it's
I was
digital.
so disorganized.
You
I
can
know.
sort by date, for Pete's sake.
So
no, I'm sorry. That is only excusable with negatives. And I am fully absolved from disorganization because I don't know anybody whose negatives are organized. But digital, you can just sort by the date. You know what the date is. It's probably on the bloody shirt.
You know, you want me to tell you why though? So before I got the Mac that I'm currently on,
yeah,
I had an iMac.
Okay.
And I had an external hard drive, but I didn't shoot RAW because I didn't have enough space. And people that I met through the lines of networking and camaraderie with amongst photographers, they'd be like, dude, you don't shoot RAW? What's wrong with you? So they're on another external hard drive on an iMac that's super slow. And I just haven't organized them onto like a smaller drive that's probably bigger than the one I have that's the size of my palm.
So,
like one of these.
So okay. Why not take that hard drive, plug it into your new Mac, search by date.
Too busy going to shows and having fun. No lecture, JJ. It's not that type of show. No, but anyway, so
it's not that type of show. Oh my god!
I guess it could be any type of show you want.
Let's Get Critical just became JJ criticizes. That's what it is. I'm going to criticize you, Matt. I'm not. I'm not. I want to talk about photography. So, when you, we've done some cool history, some cool digging. I know that I've seen you at once shooting a lot. I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the newer stuff, but I also wanted to tag something that you talked about momentarily, which is memory. And I'd love to hear you just build that out a little bit when you were talking about that. Do you know what I mean when I said hold that thought? Could you build that out a little bit? Because I think memory and photography are inexorably intertwined.
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you a quick story about how I actually started writing. So take a step back. Before I started writing for the newspaper at Wentworth, a good friend of mine who's probably watching this, Andrew, had a webzine. I remember you were talking last week with Colleen about blogs and like, do those even exist? Well, we had something before a blog existed called a webzine, and it was a magazine that was all digital. There was no print of it at all, and it was just it was a website with a bunch of news links and whatever. So Andrew, who was based on Cape Cod at the time, started this webzine called indulge.com. But before you want to link it, it's a chocolate website now, so don't bother. Andrew sold the domain years ago. It was fine. We discussed it,
Okay.
but him and I kind of became the A and B man for that website. He was the technical guy, but also loved music and going to shows. But I was the marketing guy because I'm the jibber jabber. I'd go to a show and be like, oh yeah, I write for this website, indulge.com. You should, check it out, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so Andrew one day was like, hey, do you want to write for me? And this is because I wrote about a band called Reveille at Palladium downstairs, and I just wrote it down as like a diary entry so I would remember it. Because I was like, I want to remember the show. I'm going to write about it. And that's how I started writing. I never really thought about being a writer about music. Back in when I was a child, I wanted to be a children's author, but that didn't pan out. So I liked writing, and then music just came natural because I was just, like I said, going to all the shows and stuff. So
I love hearing that like aha moment. It's like
yeah.
a mindful moment, right? Like, what was that moment? What was that motivation? That's so cool that you like just tagged that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was really just like, I don't know. It was just like I was out of high school at that point, just kind of like, I want to remember the show, but now honestly, I don't even know where that piece of writing is, and I don't really remember that show that well. I just remember the moment of like, okay, now I'm published on this webzine, and this is the coolest thing in the world. And Andrew he's my best friend, and he's like a mentor to me, and kind of guides me in other things. And he introduced me to a lot of like music back. This is like 20 years ago. We were actually covering more internet or more national acts than we were local acts. I didn't get into the local scene really until like 2009, 2010, and then the last 10 years.
So tell me about the national acts. Who were you covering?
I remember Andrew and I went to see Typo Negative at Axis.
Axis.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or no, it was actually at Avalon. Sorry.
Terribly about Axis and Avalon. Those venues, I think,
heart.
Yes, very deeply, and reminisce a moment about Axis.
I saw some pretty crazy. Like I saw Mighty Mighty Boss Tones hometown throwdown there. I saw Typo Negative.
What was the size of that room, do you think?
Probably like what Avalon was probably like 550 maybe, and Axis was maybe like 200 to 300. I mean, that was a smaller room, right?
Yeah, I remember Axis feeling small, and now somebody out there in the world is going to be like, it was 836, but the balconies made it smaller. There were no balconies.
Well, the funny part is.
Yeah, go on.
Well, no, the funny part is like, not to be like proverbially small, but back then I didn't really pay attention to that type of stuff.
No.
So like.
No, but you were right up against the stage.
That's what I'm saying. Like, even back then, I was always up close. I didn't really take photos. I was, writing or just going. I remember the first time I was in a green room was at Avalon with Typo Negative, and we interviewed this band Simon Says, which now I can't even recall where they're from, but they opened the show and Andrew was covering them. So they were national to like us, but to mass people didn't know who they were. They knew the headliners. Well,
that's what a support act. That's why you want that slot.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Now you know who they are.
Yeah. And then like I remember going to a lot of shows at the Palladium, and like I said, that was the first show that I actually wrote about. And then it was kind of just like a lot of shows I would go write about it, but the writing, I guess, became a little bit too much work to me. I mean, I know there are incredible writers out there that like Joan Anderman, that we were talking about earlier, who made a living of that. But to me, I was more visual, and then I was like, oh, photography, and I'd rather spend my time editing photos rather than editing sentences,
So ducking back into memory,
mm-hmm.
and the difference between remembering with words and remembering with images.
Oh yeah.
And which do you think is more powerful for you, or are they the same?
I'd say images now, because I mean, as people will say, the joke is like, if you can't read, you can still look at a picture, or like, oh, are there enough pictures in there for you? I mean, I don't want to downplay words because I think they're incredible and I think they do go hand in hand, but I think an image will strike you first before the words. I mean, even for this example,
Uh-huh.
I sent out an invite to this whole event and people were like, well, explain this to me. And I'm like, well, didn't you read it? Like sometimes people don't have time to read, they're just like, no, I want your summary. I want your cliff notes, but a photo will kind of grab you and then you're like, wow, and yeah, so that's how I feel about
Yeah,
that, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. Um, let's talk about some new music. Want to
Sure.
talk about new music a little
Okay.
bit? Okay. So you just told me the last band you shot at once was
A band called Knuckle Puck from Illinois.
what
Yeah.
in Illinois?
What's that?
I didn't know they were from
Oh,
Illinois.
yep. So it's kind of funny. That's a band that I had been following for a couple of years. I forget how I heard of them. And back before they were bigger than they are now, I remember I reached out to them on their Gmail address, wanting to photograph their show, possibly at, I don't even remember where it was. I could probably find the email, but I ended up getting sick and I didn't feel well enough to go to the show. So I remember writing them back personally, being like, "Sorry guys, I can't make your show. I'm feeling sick right now." And they're like, "Oh, no worries. Maybe next time." And the first time I got to the first time I got to photograph them was actually in Ohio, at the small club that I randomly went to see them, and I got to photograph them. But then when Alex Pickert, shout out to Alex, booked them at lovely Once Ballroom, I was like, I need to be there. And I almost wasn't going to be there. But then they approved me officially to photograph. So it's like full circle.
Wicked. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think they're putting
How
out a
about
new album this
for,
year.
I want to shout out also to Alex Pickert, who in life I've had this experience periodically where there's an agent, a booker, a promoter, whatever you want to call that person, who brings through bands that I like sometimes more than other bands. And Alex is definitely somebody who brings stuff that I'm like, oh, I'm glad I got turned on to that new band. That's really cool. I feel like, you said something earlier about how your musical taste is really broad. Mine is not. My musical taste goes from indie rock to grunge. And
I
that's
like that
really
too.
about it. I mean, let's put metal in there because, but even within that, and anybody who works at Once will tell you, my love of metal is more about being in a room live with it, blowing my face off than like, I don't go home and listen to metal records unless it's like pretty classic stuff. But I have a pretty limited palette. And so when I find somebody who brings bands through that consistently, I'm like, I enjoyed at least like one on the bill of three.
And that's good for you.
Yeah. My one complaint though, Alex Pickard, if you're listening, Alex, I don't even need to tell him. He knows I used to say it all the time. My one complaint about those shows is that those bands that play really hard, they play really short, like 20 minutes sometimes. And so I would have these bills that would start at 9 and be over at like 10:30. I'd be like, I need people to stay here and drink for at least 3 more hours. I'm like, we never figured it out.
Aw.
But the great shows.
Yeah. Well, that was a really fun show. I remember that Knuckle Puck show, I think it was like February 26th. I remember kind of being worried about the impending pandemic that was going to be upon us and kind of being like, okay, I don't want to be too close, but it's not that big, and it was a punk show, so there's a lot of moshing and no crowd surfing, of course. but yeah, it was kind of like that. So that show, kind of sticks out in my mind. But all those shows at once that I've been to have always been really fun and, a great time.
No crowd surfing. Were you at that Linnea's record release show where she dove off the stage into an inflatable unicorn?
No, I missed that, but I believe I saw the pictures.
And so this is a good story, actually. So she got in touch with me before that show, and she said, I would like your permission to stage dive and crowd surf. I'd like to get this inflatable rainbow unicorn kiddie pool, and I'd like to jump into it. And I said, sure, no problem. Just make sure you've got like a minimum of 10 people
to catch you.
To catch you. And she did. She had it completely. I mean, I talked to people who were like, oh yeah, I'll be there. And like, she had a lot of people ready to support it. And I had approved it, but I didn't tell anybody at the venue. It just didn't occur to me to tell anybody at the venue that I had approved it. And when she jumped off the stage, everybody working there had a heart attack.
Oh no.
Like everybody was like, no. But I think what they then said was like, it seemed like it was pretty well controlled. So they figured like they would just deal with it afterward, like have a stern conversation. But I started running around saying to everybody, it's okay. I told her she could do it. They were all like, you didn't tell us.
Oops.
So best crowd surfing shows. Go.
Oh, at your venue?
Anywhere.
Oh, anytime. You ever hear the band Thursday?
Nope.
So Thursday, they're kind of inactive-ish, but they were around in the early thousands. They had the best crowd interaction ever.
Okay.
I've seen the Middle East Downstairs, Palladium. They played Bill's Bar once. And it's one of those bands where the audience has to be in the singer's face like the whole time. So that's almost not even a crowd surf. It's just a convergence, you know. So I'd say best shows would be hardcore shows for that. Once Ballroom was last year. Earth Crisis played, and I was at that one.
Crowd surfing.
No, that's true. Well, that's because they're a little older.
Allow that.
Yeah, right.
Matt.
Yeah.
We were talking before, and I asked you if you had any photos you wanted to show us.
Oh, right.
But I've been having such a good time chatting that I kind of forgot that we were going to do that. And I feel a little weird about having forgot because I was going to do that. And would you like to show us a couple of photos before we have to clock out?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have some ready.
Cool.
So are we all ready on the tech side to start the share screen?
That's a great question. I think so.
Okay, let's see.
I just got a message. Good to go.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Look at that.
All right. So this is a late edition. I just did this during the intro. Last summer, actually almost to the day, August 4th, 2019, I got to photograph Queen with Adam Lambert. That was probably the most nerve-wracking show ever. This was at the Great Woods Amphitheater, now called Xfinity Center, and the stage setup for Queen and Adam Lambert was supposed to be for like arenas. So they built out this catwalk into the seats. And when we were allowed in the barrier at an amphitheater, we were pretty much right in front of their catwalk. And we were like, okay. And it was right there. So this is Brian May, probably goes without saying.
Yeah, great.
I could go through a whole series on just this show alone, but this is the one I chose. I really like it because it kind of looks like he's grabbing the ball of light at the top with his fist.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's one of my favorite photos, and probably one of the most shows that I was like heart pounding and kind of like, holy crap, what am I going to see?
Colleen on Facebook just said gorgeous. I couldn't agree more. What a beautiful, beautiful photo of such an important person.
Yeah. Yeah, gorgeous. He really makes it. All right, so next one.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh.
So this one we talked about on soundcheck. This is different, not anything in time sequence, but this is Lord from Boston Calling in 2014, I believe. This was when Boston Calling was still at the City Hall Plaza, and this was after a massive rainstorm where they had to evacuate City Hall Plaza. And I remember I had to run to the local Boloco and had dinner while we waited to see what was going to happen. So I remember getting back, and actually this was an important moment where I actually felt claustrophobic and a little panic stricken in her pit because there were so many photographers. Like, it was almost one of those shows where you can't tell where the barrier is from the fans to the photographers because it was just a sea of people trying to capture her.
You know,
I believe I read.
People don't know this about this, that photographers are in this little space, or maybe they do if they've seen them, but you're only allowed to be there for 3 songs, right?
Right. Depending on the band, sometimes it's only 2, sometimes it's only 1. It really depends on how much the artist wants to protect or control their...
How many songs for Lord?
I think that was 3. I mean, sometimes when that happens, it can go by so fast. It's like you're just on autopilot and you're just like,
Sure.
and the blessing and the curse of digital photography, as you know, is you could take anywhere from, 50 to 300 shots in the course of like 6 minutes or even more.
I can't imagine. I used to get 3 songs and I had 36 images and that was it.
Well,
and I always wondered about it because I always thought that's crazy because they just were getting warmed up. But I'm sure that it also had to do with them not being like sweaty and gross because
right.
they know you're shooting during those first 3 songs.
Yeah.
They're going to put it on.
Well, what's interesting too is some bands will be, I think Incubus is like a 4, 5, and 6 band. So sometimes they want to be sweaty, or they want to be warmed up. I think 9 Inch Nails had a similar stipulation where there was like in the middle of the set rather the first 3.
Interesting. See, that makes sense. I never had that happen.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. And I think it's interesting you said you felt like you're suffocating because she looks like she's underwater.
So this shot, I couldn't even tell you how I did it, but when I got it off my camera, I mean, this is, like I said, this is about 6 years old, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" And I was like, "I don't know, thank you." It was just
it's great,
kind of lucky. All right, moving on. This is Brandi Carlile at Boston Calling in the current iteration of it at the Harvard Athletic Stadium. She's an incredible performer. I love the shot because she's just smiling at the band.
Current. We'll see. Current even means not this year.
No, this was 2019. I believe, yeah. Next one, another one from Boston Calling, Hayley Williams, also an artist that just released her solo album, and I'm really into it. She was supposed to play, I think, at House of Blues, but anyway. So I love that. You might recognize the floor on this one.
Oh,
this was during that.
My sconce. There's my sconce.
Yep. So this was Knuckle Puck in February, and I thought this was hilarious because I took a picture of the crowd going crazy, and this dude, whether or not he knew he was staring at me, I got a clear picture of his face.
It's great. It's a really, it's a totally passionate photo. I love it. Oh,
and then here's one of the stage at once of Knuckle Puck. Not really the sharpest photo, but this was a tough show because there's no barrier at once. So when you take a photo there, if you either get there early enough and you can be in the front, like Nikki T always does, she's always in the front. I get a little nervous now, especially during a punk show. Now there's no crowd surfing, but there's going to be a lot of pushing and shoving. And again,
this little crowd surfing.
So this was late February, so I didn't really want to get up front and up close and personal. So I stood in the back. So I had a long lens. And that's my social distance lens.
This is something that people don't know, that unless you're a photographer, that the longer your lens is, the more zoom your lens is, the faster your shutter speed needs to be, or you get a lot of blur. Yeah. So you just evoked Nikki T.
Yeah.
And, somebody asked on I'm not sure. Oh, on YouTube, somebody asked to shout out your favorite mass-based photographers.
Oh, geez, that's putting me on the spot. If that was one of the mass-based photographers, it's going to be a crappy person if I don't mention them. All right. Tim Bugby and Ben Stas are 2 of my favorite Boston photographers, and I happen to call them fairly close friends. They might object that, but also Jack Hutchings, John Hutchings is one of my favorites too. He also works on New England Sounds with Colleen, who was your guest last week, and he's an amazing person we've worked and collaborated together on a lot of things. Nikki T, obviously, she goes without saying. How about yourself, JJ Gonson? I mean, come on, that's some legendary stuff that you have. And
7 years, I shot at once like 3 times. And the reason I didn't shoot was because you guys were shooting and I felt like it wasn't necessary, but it was only after it closed that I thought, why wasn't I shooting film?
I think during your Julie Kramer segment a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that, and whatever it takes, whenever it can happen, we got to get you shooting again.
That was just dumb. Maybe what I should do is put a shout out to bands and be like, I'll come to you. You got some more pictures for us? I love looking.
Oh yeah, okay. So
2 ages ago. I'm sorry I didn't. Ooh.
This is the incredible Mike McCready of Pearl Jam. So this was taken.
Pants.
What's that?
Pants.
Yeah, pants. He's the wild child of Pearl Jam. This was at Fenway Park. This was the second chance I got to see photograph Pearl Jam. They happen to be my favorite band. This also happened to be on my birthday. It's a pretty memorable show. And this was tough though because Fenway Park now is huge. So you go from a small once ballroom to huge Fenway Park, and there was a pit, but there was a lot of camera equipment in front of you and stuff. So you kind of had to maneuver above the camera equipment and frame your photo just right and kind of get it. So this might be cropped a little bit, but yeah, that's Mike.
And this photo is indicative of something that drives me bonkers about a photo pit at an arena, which is no matter what you do, you're shooting up their nose. But this one is successful because he's showing you his nose. And the Lord's one also was successful. But I think it's a thing, you know, it's a look from arena pits, but I hated shooting in arenas because I hated shooting up their noses.
Yeah, it can be tough. I have a lot of worm view, you know, like you're the little worm on the ground and you're looking up at the big world. You get a lot of that sometimes. And I'm not the tallest guy, but I'm not the shortest either. All right, here's one. House of Blues, January. Snoop Dogg, goes without saying. That was a fun show. Yeah. I think that was, yeah, that show, that was another one. I didn't get as panicked, but everyone was in the pit for that show, including people that you don't normally see who were just kind of standing there, and it was kind of frustrating.
But they have a barrier.
Yes, House of Blues has a barrier, so that is you're kind of automatically know you're going to have some protection, somewhat.
Were you shooting at did you shoot at the Hometown Throwdown this last year?
I did, and I remember a conversation you and Julie Kramer were having. You were like, this is why I don't shoot in the pit. I got to shoot elbow to elbow with Julie Kramer, which is amazing because I love her, and I like can't believe that I'm actually photographing with her. But that was a crap show. It was crazy.
Did you get kicked in the head like every 2 minutes? It was
no.
crazy. I've never seen people. It was like waves of crowd surfing. Waves. Just
yeah.
It was
no. So shout out to House of Blues real quick. Their staff, they protect us. You know, especially people like me or Tim or Jack or Ben or just the regulars that will shoot 1 to 3 shows a week there. They get to know you at least by face, and they really look out for us. And they're not afraid to shove you out of the way if it means they're going to catch a crowd surfer over your head and not let you get kicked in the face or get your camera kicked or something worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's one of those things though. I had an experience, to go quick. I think that's the last shot too, so I'll escape out of this. But one time I was switching lenses. And this is a rule number 1 for all you photographers: do not switch lenses and stick them between your legs while you switch.
No, put them in your bra strap.
Yeah, no, but this was a 70 to 200 millimeter lens that I was switching.
You couldn't put that in your bra strap.
So I had it between my legs, and a crowd surfer came toward me, and stupid me did an NBA pivot move, and the lens just went plop right on the ground at House of Blues. Concrete ground plus 70 to 200 millimeter lens, no bueno. I had to get it fixed by Canon. And I definitely, and it wasn't even my lens, but I learned my lesson.
The hard way, quote, unquote.
All right.
I wanted to say earlier when you were talking about getting kicked in the face at hardcore shows, I also am not a huge person. And what I used to do was I used to climb up on top of anything tall, which usually was the cabinets, the PA. Mm-hmm. And at TT's, that actually, the PA at once is the PA I used to climb on top of at TT's.
That's cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, TT's.
A lot of people didn't know that because then they would have tried to do it and I would have had to kick them off. Once in a while, a band climbed up on top of it. But honestly, like I can say all these secrets now, right? You know what I'm going to say out loud? No, I'm not. Never mind.
All right. Well, I will say for TTs, I used to kind of, depending on the band, because sometimes bands would freak out, is I used to hop up on the stairs and kind of shoot from the corner.
Sure.
But then you get that side view, which isn't always great, but it's great sometimes.
Great. That back view out over the audience.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Did you shoot from the stairs?
I know. I got to collect some of those.
Did you shoot from the stairs at once?
I have, but usually I'm reluctant because I don't want to get barked at.
Oh, come on.
I don't know. I don't always like to throw my weight around like, don't you know who I am? No, but no, I think I have. I think I've gone up on the stairs and shot like the drummer or like a side view, you know, from the stage left.
You
Yeah.
you gotta.
Yeah, I've definitely hidden in that corner, like where they put their equipment. Joni Lindstrom and I hang out there.
Which corner? The one
Corner
by
by
the
the
door?
chairs, not the
By
bathroom
the
side, the other.
chairs. Oh, once. What a
Sorry.
wonderful place. No, it's just so funny. Like I always was those chairs to me were always kind of like the difference between being like a grown-up venue and a pretend venue. Like we don't know what to do with these chairs, so we're just gonna pile them in the corner. They were really useful. I mean, we used them a lot for comedy and when we had seated shows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the staff at once, we would, and by we I mean other people usually, although I used to do it too, but we when we first opened, the guy who was helping with the design stuff, helping with like the ordering and stuff, he said, "You're going to need a chair dolly." And I had no idea what a chair dolly is, and it turns out a chair dolly is it's like a cross between a forklift and a dolly, right? So it's like a long thing, but on like a regular dolly. And so you fork this huge stack of chairs and tip it backwards. So you can move like 8 to 12 chairs at a time. Because do we have folding chairs? No, we do not. We have 8,000 pounds of ballroom chairs.
Yeah, those are the old school ones. Yeah. But that's what I love about Once too, because I remember when I first went there and I was kind of like, well, this place is kind of trippy. It's like a VFW hall meets like banquet hall, like underground, and like it's cool. And it's even that journey has, from when I've been going there, like I feel like it's been built up even in the past couple of years.
Make me a photo album of your Once photos.
Okay, I will. That'll have to be my homework.
Folder. I would love that. You are so talented. It's so
thank you.
Your pictures and hear you talk about them. And maybe next time we'll actually give you a moment to do like a real photo slideshow, not a last minute like, hey, Matt, could you throw 4 photos together for me? Because, it's fun to see slideshows. It's fun to see the pictures and talk about them and hear those stories about, being panic attack in the pit because it's so crowded. And I can identify with that.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. I wouldn't, even before I was taking photos, I always like to kind of be up front, like with the speakers in my face. So this was kind of like a cool excuse to get up front and then have some cool like artifacts of being up front. I think that's kind of part of it. I also wanted to shout out and I know you asked Colleen this last week, and I know we might be almost out of time, but new music, like new bands to check out.
Yes.
You're going to have a homework
assignment. Aaron is out there taking notes. We're going to get you some links. So, bands, go.
Knucklepuck is one of them. Knucklepuckil.com, I believe. That's how I remember. They're from Illinois. This UK singer-songwriter, his name is Sam Tompkins. He's amazing. Sam, S-A-M, Tompkins, Tompkins. Also, Hayley Williams' new album. It's called Petals for Armor. It's pretty outstanding, and I think she's a one to watch. She's amazing. And obviously, shout out to the new Pearl Jam album, Gigaton, which is an amazing record. I was supposed to see them and likely photograph them this year. It's all gone out the window, but we still have that lovely album to listen to. So
it's going to come back in the window, Matt.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's going to come back, or maybe it'll come back in through the front door. But it's not forever. This is not forever. It's horrible, but it's not forever.
Yeah, true. No, I know. I feel that. I mean, I try to remain as positive as I can be throughout all of this. And Zooms help. I mean, I know some people get annoyed with them, and some people don't like them, but I feel like this community outreach, whether it's talking like we are, or performances on Zoom, or any live platform, I've done them all. Not personally, but I've visited them all. It's great to hear people on like Facebook Live or Instagram. Technology is great. I think it's even going to get better from here on out. I feel like we've learned a lot about each other during these times too.
I think so too.
Yeah. I
think so too. I really do. I think it's interesting what you're saying about that the technology is going to get better, and I was so pleasantly surprised when we started the virtual channel, or not surprised, but pleasantly, I'm really running circles here. I was pleased to find that something that I thought might be true was true, which is that bands are remarkable when it comes to technology and recording themselves and making videos and being creative in so many ways. And the art that immediately started coming out of the internet was startlingly good. And I don't think that it replaces live music, but I do think it supplements and augments it temporarily.
I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. And actually, wait, one last artist to shout out, Jonah Matrenga. He was at the band Far. He has a bunch of bands. Anyway, I was on his Zoom about an hour before this one, and he kind of mentioned that whole like technology is coming so far because he's not as techy, and he gets someone kind of like you guys in the background of like the tech side of it, and that's what I like, kind of like artists that can work with others to make this happen. You know, whether they know how to do it or not, they're gonna like, yeah, there you go. Thank you for the Jonah link. They're gonna make it happen either way. And I think that's a guy you got to book at once when we can get things back.
Bridget, take note.
Yeah, Bridget, take note. Is Bridget here?
I don't think Bridget is here,
Oh,
but
oh.
I'll make sure to get all of this. I like feeding back to everybody like, ooh, new bands, new bands.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not exactly new. He was from Boston, but he moved out to San Francisco, and he's based out there now. But he's all about he always says life should be less like a mall and more like a yard sale.
Oh,
And I've always loved that quote. Yeah.
that's very sweet.
Yep. Yep.
That is
That's
very
him.
sweet.
Yeah.
Right, my friend.
Time to wrap it up.
The clock on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, time to like make dinner and eat, right?
It's time to make dinner and eat. And this has been such a pleasure, and I so appreciate your time with me today. And I would love to ask you to come back and we'll do a slideshow. I think that would be super fun.
Sure, yeah.
And it's so nice to see you, you know, as a fixture at once. It's so weird to not be seeing people. And I didn't really realize how accustomed to it I was until it wasn't happening.
I know. So, same. I miss the heck out of everyone. I'm never going to take a live show for granted whenever they come back, or little venues like yours, or even big venues in a sense.
We'll all be back. We will all be back. So until we are, thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to turn on their camera and wave, we'd love that. And we will see you again next week for Let's Get Critical. And I really appreciate you being here.
Too. Thanks.